So, sorry for the long question, but
Yeah, no. Well, it just followed. It wasn't that subject is the one that really interests me the most presently,
yes,
and it's about the only conspiracy theory
yes,
that I had not heard of that I've investigated, other than perhaps the Mandela effect. When I got started, I started the channel and called it UAP for unidentified aerial phenomenon because I thought I'm going to look at conspiracy. I was looking at UFOs at the time
yes,
because I was tired of the science. I used to always read science news, and journals and things like that. And
yes,
I was getting upset. I used to enjoy reading them, but I found myself being upset. And I thought, why am I upset? Well, because it's the same crap. It's the same garbage from 10 years ago. I recognized the stories. They're just repackaged. I got bored, and so I started looking at more esoteric things. And I was looking at UFOs, so I started the channel UAP just to, I figured, well, I'm bored. I'm going to tackle these conspiracy theories because Flat Earth was taking off at the time, and I had seen it pop up on the video feed,
yes,
on YouTube with like Eric Dubay videos and stuff like that that would never happen now. They've fixed that algorithm, but
exactly.
yeah, and so, but it was popping up, and I thought, I'm going to dispense with these. Like I saw people fumbling the debunking.
Yes,
Like I'd watch a minute of it, and I can't watch. They're screwing it up. They're not even debunking it. And so I thought I'll do it myself, and I went through and you've heard the story probably. That's how I got going, and I was not debunking anything. But this mystery history wasn't part of that. It's not on my original list of conspiracy theories to debunk.
okay,
So I came across it as a natural outcome of, well, they're lying to us presently, like, with the news today.
yep,
They're lying to us about the future of what we can do, what we will do, perhaps, well, definitely now, what we can't do. They don't tell us the truth. And then so it makes sense that, well, if you go back in time, they've lied about the past. And I thought, well, it's probably just an outcome of the fake news of the day. But when I started looking into it, I started to get the same effects that I got from looking into like the fake space, the hoax of outer space, where it was very vindicating to me because as an intelligent person who just has been curious and struggling to learn things of an esoteric nature, I don't care about what everybody else knows. I want to know the things that are meaningful that most people don't know. That's how I've always been. And I had trouble with certain things that I would come across that didn't fit in science.
yes,
And like how gravity is such a weak force compared to other things, yet it shapes everything that we see.
yeah,
Doesn't make sense. So with history,
yeah,
I have even more of those things when I hear about the story of how how the life of Abraham Lincoln, or just anything that they really teach.
exactly.
You sit back and you listen to this stuff. What the? You're telling me this man lived this life? He's a hero. He lived the most miserable life of struggle and failure, and he never got to appreciate anything. It's kind of it seems like a tale, like exactly. A tall tale or a story.
Reality.
Yeah, and you start to see that, and so it's just a natural outcome from that I started to look at the architecture because it is one of the things that is accessible to us, and it's a big enough of a monumental physical artifact that it can't be so easily manipulated. You can burn books, can silence people. There's different things that they can do, but this vast amount of architecture everywhere, just they couldn't possibly cover it all up. And I found it to be a very fun game to go through and decipher what it is they're hiding and why and how, and just pursue it with certain questions like if and then. So I would ask a question,
because you discovered that word wild, that they had a same red thread through them. Am I right? Sorry, interrupting you.
Can you say it again? I didn't.
That you discovered that they, because I saw that your videos about Tartaria and these buildings and giants started to pop up, and after a while I learned that of your researches, of course, that there is something, a red thread through them worldwide, whether it's South America or northern Moscow. It's like it's same kind of structure and
right.
Yeah.
Right. And they use Roman numerals, and you have like Latin. So it's a different case here, and then more so with like Australia, New Zealand, South Africa than in Europe. Now, having been in Europe, I when I first went to Europe in high school, I thought, I'm really going to enjoy this older stuff that's ancient, that people live in. But I found it to be not so different than what we have here, which I found curious. And then one thing that frustrated me, because at one point I was into like antiques a little bit, like artifacts, hoping to collect some really old things. And when I went to Europe, I figured, I can go around and probably find things that are hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case. I was shocked by the scarcity of artifacts from, centuries and centuries ago. It didn't make sense to me that there wouldn't be more of those things. But the architecture obviously is there. But I would see these explanations. This village was built by the Romans, but wait a minute, that there's a village in Indiana that looks not too different from that in the style of architecture. So things weren't really adding up, and the whole westward expansion, and just it's so many different factors. I started to develop like a theory, and I was watching some videos of other YouTubers like Martin Liedtke, and there was a channel called Mud Flood. I don't know if he's still there. I think he's gone now, but Conspiracies Are Us. They really gave me a jump start into that. And so I tested the theories by saying, okay, I'm just going to randomly pick a place and see if the origins of these structures make sense.
Okay.
And so I just picked a city like in Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa. And when I looked into it, the narrative is so ridiculous and impossible. It's nonsensical. From an economic standpoint, it didn't make sense. From a personnel standpoint, it didn't make sense. From a technology standpoint, it didn't make sense. From a material standpoint, it didn't make sense. From a logistics, transportation, it wasn't possible. It just, none of it made sense. And there's a certain cutoff. You go back a certain amount of time, and as you approach about 1890.
Yeah.
If you get before 1890, things go crazy. These continuous streams of documented history that we have in countless forms.
Yes.
It completely breaks down by about 1850, and it's one of these things I noticed. Like, I don't know that anybody else noticed it, but I'm sure some people did. Just throughout the years of my education and my personal study research, I see these graphs, and they always seem to begin at 1850.
Okay.
Now, I figured, well, in the United States, maybe, there's a scientific revolution, whatever, a revolution. Well, that really doesn't explain it, because you look in all these different areas, and even people's personal family histories, a lot of them break down, which some of that's to be expected, but the sharp decline drop off, it doesn't follow. Like, I started to realize that something major happened.
Yes.
And of course there's an explanation for it. Civil War, or you have, like, in other areas of the world, you have other events that are the official explanation for the turmoil and the disarray and all the orphans, but you look at that, and then even that doesn't make sense. The Civil War, like, I thought at the time, but it was pretty clear, like, I understood World War II.
Yes.
But the Civil War, I didn't quite understand. We just formed the Union, and now, in order to have a slightly better economic outlook, we're going to absolutely devastate half the country or die trying. It didn't make sense.
No.
It just, like, I thought it was fought over slavery.
Yeah, that
until
nonsense.
I found out it wasn't.
Yeah, that nonsense that the white man would leave his family and go and fight for against slavery when they 100 years ago discriminated the same person doesn't sound logical. But I just need to add this: I don't really buy this story that every white man in America was a racist and they raped every. They were not only racist; they were slave owner and they raped every black girl. I don't buy that story that Hollywood tried to sell us. So I just need to make that clear. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah, no, and it's the same type of thing. I saw it in real time. It comes down from the top. They create a narrative, the Hegelian dialectic, putting two groups against each other. And so at least in the United States in the 1990s, they worked very hard at creating racial tension. Once you understand that the news is fake and scripted, it really becomes clear. But in the 1990s, we had the race riots, and how much of it was real, I don't know. Some of it was, but there's the whole O.J. Simpson case, and
oh my God, yeah,
and yeah, once you learn how to see through those things, you can tell, that was a whole scripted, planned, acted, theatric production.
Yep.
For many different purposes, but one of them was just to create the racial tension, and so yeah, I think a lot of the stuff about the slavery and all that stuff was and in a lot of aspects was real, but then in a lot of other aspects wasn't, because it wouldn't make sense if somebody is if someone's a slave owner and they think of somebody else as their personal property.
Yeah.
It's not that different than today with the way employees are treated in a lot of places.
Exactly.
And you don't see the bosses viciously beating their employees.
No.
For like, that's ridiculous. You don't. There's no reason to do that. And any kind of, like, acts like that will cause the average good person to rise up and strike out
and
against
always
that.
Yeah, and always with the Bible in the hand. You know, when they beat
Oh
up
yeah,
when they beat up the black people, always with the Bible in the hand. Always
right.
the Christians who. That's also. I don't remember really. Yeah, one of the movie he's done. The guy who have done Desperado and those old movies. He have done Cujo or something, and that's it's a black man who he's going around the country and trying to save other black slaves. And yeah,
Like Django
yes,
Unchained or
that's
something like that.
exactly
Hmm.
that's and there is it. That's so ridiculous, so obvious that every time the they show a white man, it's with Bible, and he's dumb or redneck, and I don't know, it's something
Hmm.
new going in mainstream. If you have noticed it, or
Yeah, and that's one of the things. Like in the truther community, you have different philosophies and religions,
yes,
and I don't put it out there uh, to proselytize or whatever. But just one of the things I noticed for the motivations for the strange things that they do.
yes,
If you're going to lie, if you're making money from the lie, well, anybody can understand that, I think. But when they lie about things like you mentioned, and they have to have, in the movie Shawshank Redemption, the sadistic warden of the prison, he always quotes Bible verses, and he has
yeah,
nothing in his office but a Bible and a
yeah,
pistol. And then he eventually holds the Bible and shoots himself at the end, just because the truth was found out.
yeah,
Well, that's a ridiculous thing. Uh, and why would they do that? Well, it's I say it over and over again. They do this because they're trying to make it seem like the Bible isn't true and God doesn't exist.
exactly,
And one thing that's been helpful to me going into all this is that as a Bible believing Christian, I saw through the lie of evolution a long time ago.
yeah, same,
And yeah,
yeah.
how long ago was it for you?
I mean,
Like
I'm
before you were in the business, or
yeah.
after you?
Before I even was, I was very young when I just really questioned my teacher, and I have always had problem also with my teachers in schools, and I have always, since I don't really when I was already really young, maybe when I was 15 or 16, I had a friend named Bobak, an Iranian guy, and we had a long walks and talked, even though we were just 15, 16. Our friend were we out and drank, and it wasn't that we didn't have fun or didn't met girls, but we had our nights, and we had our walks and talked about those stuff that. And I am brought up Christian, Greek Orthodox, with a mother who just is Jesus everywhere and everything. So we were talking about that it can't add up. Evolution and Big Bang and um, so I have it with me long before I start to see videos from you, Eric Dubay, and others, and started to, wow, there are others who are thinking like I do, and I just came into it more and more. But this feeling of God and Christianity and evolution doesn't add up, had woke me up really young age. So I have been always a little critical in all my life, I would say.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah. And did you notice how, like, I don't know how much into science you were, but um, you had to notice that they're very strict about the scientific method: observable, repeatable, reproducible. It has to be that way. You follow it strictly.
exactly,
But when it comes to evolution,
exactly.
it's completely different.
Yep.
And it didn't make sense. Never did. It doesn't make sense.
Yes.
unless you see it as, well, they don't really deep down follow the scientific method. If they did, they would admit that they have a major problem with their age of the earth, age of the universe.
I mean, at least mathematical stuff you can say it's a theory, but evolution is just assumption more or less. Am I right?
Yeah, it's not a theory, right? I mean, you could almost call it a theory where they could test it based on certain assumptions, but even then, no, because of the assumptions. If the assumptions are falsifiable, then it can't be a theory, and the assumptions are thoroughly falsified.
Very fast. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
yeah, so yeah, it's they. Oh, I don't know. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, they just do this formula that I figured out, and it's like a computer. It's like a script, I've just recently gotten into watching this channel, Quantum of Conscience.
Matt.
With Matt. Yeah. And I like how he refers to it as a script, because it's like that. And I had hit on that a long time ago with the evolution, where I would read an article, and I had a skill developed a long time ago of reading science articles and tossing out entire sections of it, like when they discuss the evolutionary basis for something.
Yep.
You can just take that part of it and toss it. It's worthless.
Yep.
It's not. If it leads to any kind of technology or something, it would be a miracle, because it's nonsensical, random musings of fantasy. And so the age of the earth was an easy one. Like anything that goes beyond the verifiable roughly 6,000 years, it just gets kooky and wacky. It becomes completely unscientific as far as accuracy.
Yeah.
It becomes unscientific also with the wild levels of precision, but mainly the ridiculous high levels of precision.
Yeah.
But I figured out the formula, and that's where if you were to do an experiment or write an article that's going to be submitted to a journal for peer review, which I call peer pressure review. Like when kids get together and say, "You're not cool if you don't smoke." It's like that.
Yeah.
So, but all you have to do is you can be revolutionary and go against your professors and the university and the history books and the science books.
Yeah.
And you may be accepted as long as you have one of these elements, like something. Okay, you say this isn't 30 million years old; it's 40,000 years old.
Yeah.
They'll accept it